Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Sharon Oyella, and today we are working on this little mountain. And you will need the written pattern. This is not a stitch-by-stitch tutorial. This tutorial is going to show you how to sew in some plastic pieces, glue in the felt lining, how to make this little pouch part here, install the chain, and also how to make the extensions of the snow peak and sew that piece in. These mountains are for these little Yeti monsters. And this pattern is also free on my blog. More information is in the written pattern for the mountain. Alright guys, you need to go to my blog now and pick up that written pattern. Read down the beginning of the pattern very slowly. There's all the information that you're going to need, how to print off the pattern, the supplies list, the yarn and hook that I use to make the mountain with. And then you're going to do up to row 19, and then you'll come back here with that piece and we'll work on the rest of it together. So you can go grab that pattern. You can find the link up here in the iCard, also in the description box below. Alright, so we are going to install our plastic pieces, and this is the piece, what it looks like right now, just a round piece with no shape to it. The last stitch that you just put in, do pull it out into a great big loop and leave it hanging. And the reason why we do that is because as we're sewing pieces in, if we pull on this yarn tail here, this working yarn tail, we could end up pulling out all of our stitches. So by the time we get down to here, we should have noticed that we're pulling on it. So just pull it out and leave it hanging like that. Okay, and now I'm going to make this the corner and the bottom of my mountain. It doesn't really matter where you start, but I just like it there in the corner so it's kind of out of the way. And we're going to shape this mountain a little bit like this with our plastic pieces. So you should have read in the pattern already that I've shaped mine a little bit to help it fit in there. This is the front part, and the back I rounded out the corners so it just fits in there a little bit nicer. So I'm going to give you the measurements in a minute. And of course you don't have to be exact. It's going to get sewn in like this. And I want to be able to crochet on, so you can see I've left some space there for myself. And then the top piece, again, I curved out the back. This is how it's going to go in. So I curve this part out so it just fits in a little bit better, and then this piece is tapered down. And you'll notice when you cut yours that if you don't cut it on a taper, then this will have a space. So you can just play around with that size. I'm going to give you the measurements like I said in a second. So that's pretty much what we want it to look like. So let's measure the top first. So it's going to go in like this. So the front part that tapers down is, or tapers out I should say, is 8 3/4, almost 9 inches. It tapers right down to almost 7.5 inches. And the width is 2.5 inches, just a little bit better than 2.5 inches. And then my bottom piece, and all of this will be in the written pattern of course, 4.5 inches at the widest taper, 4.5 inches, and back there it's down to about 3 1/4, and it's almost 3 inches wide. I am popping in with another edit because I wanted to be super clear that you don't have to do exactly what I'm doing with these pieces here. You can make them, this piece here, actually longer, and it would give you even more room inside for your little guy. If you made this little guy, then you want to have enough room inside for him to fit in there. So if you do the exact measurements that I did, or round about the same measurements that I did for the plastic piece, then you'll have just enough room for him to fit in there. So this one is a little bit shorter, I saw, because look, he's a little bit more squished in there. So the length of this piece will give you more height or less height depending on how you cut it. And depending on how you cut that will affect this bottom one here. So you can make this one shorter on the sides, and then the top one could be longer, and you get more height up here. You want to test out the height before you sew those plastic pieces in, of course. And you can also make them a little bit too long and then just keep trimming them up a little bit until they fit in there just the way you want them to. I'm going to sew in my bottom piece first, and if you forgot to cut some yarn for sewing, just reach into the middle of your yarn ball. There should be some yarn in there. the end piece. And here's mine, so I'm just going to cut some of that off. And I'm going to be using my needle that I use for sewing amigurumi. It fits through those squares just fine. This is a size 13, I believe. So like I said, I'm going to sew the bottom in first, and I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm just going to go through those holes and just sew around. I'm going to continue around and then across the front. So I've made it all the way across the front. And I'm just going to bring this down here. I'm going to knot it off with my first yarn tail that I went in with. And then I'm going to use these yarn tails to sew in the side pieces as well. Okay, that's knotted off, so now I'll bring it up to the front. And then I'll install my side piece. And the rounded ends go to the back. And remember, you want to have that space in the front for your crochet hook to get through. So you just want to have a little bit of space between the edges of your plastic piece and the edges of your yarn. And I'm going to pull that tight. And I could wrap it around, might give it a little bit more strength if I wrap it around here and then up through a square in the bottom piece. Let's see how that works. And then pull it tight. Yeah, that just kind of butts it up together there, so I'll do that again a little ways back. Pull it through, wrap over, and then into one of those squares in the bottom piece. Pull tight, and then into the side piece. Yeah, that's working well. And it kind of holds those two pieces together. And pull tight. Once you know what you're doing, you don't even have to look inside there. You can just feel your way through the bottom square, or the bottom piece, and then as long as you're going through a square in the top, then those two pieces are connected, and then you can pull through. And there we go. So that is pretty much done, so I'm going to knot this off here, and then I'll work on the other side. Instead of breaking free, I can just carry this right underneath the yarn. So I'm going in between the yarn and the plastic piece and carry it over to the other side. There we go. Just stop and rearrange everything. And now I'll do this side. Okay, now I'm going to do some stitches along the front here with my yarn tail. I'm just going to go all the way around the front. Longer stitches on the inside are okay. On the outside you want to keep them a little bit on the shorter side because you'll be able to see them if you have them too long. And remember to pull snug. So I've made it all the way down to the bottom. And I don't think it's necessary to add any in the back, on the very back, because we've done across the bottom there and across the top. And yeah, I think it's fine that way. You can add the stitches in the back if you wanted to. But I think what I'll do right now is just knot these off, and then I'll bury these yarn tails. And I'll thread them both with my yarn needle. And I'll carry them underneath. So in between the mesh and my yarn, and just pull it through anywhere. And cut free. Now we're ready to crochet on. What I did with the smaller one is right from here I put one single crochet in the next two stitches, and then 2 single crochets into the third, and I kept repeating that all the way around to where I started. I didn't bother adding a marker, and I don't think you should really worry about stitch count right now. You just want to repeat that sequence all the way around back to this corner here. So 1 single crochet in the first, 1 single crochet in the second, and then 2 single crochets into the third. And now repeat that 1 single crochet in the first, 1 in the second, and 2 into the third. I'm going to keep repeating that sequence all the way around back to where I started. Alright, I've made it all the way back to where I started, and now I'm going to do another set, 1 single crochet in the next 3 stitches, and then 2 single crochets into the fourth, and I'm going to keep repeating that again around back to where I started. Alright, I've made it around, and I should have about 90 stitches, and I wouldn't stop and do a stitch count. As long as you did that sequence all the way around, and it looks somewhat like this, then you're fine. I think I'm going to have to add another row, so I'm going to do another set around, and this time I will do 1 single crochet in the next 4 stitches, and then 2 single crochets into the 5th. And I'll repeat that all the way around back to where I started. Just add another row and widen it out just a little bit more. Alright, I've made it around, and I think I have enough now. When I add my next row, when I close it up, it'll look somewhat like this. I'm hoping anyway. I want that little bit of a space there for the face to peek through. I think that's cute. If I wanted to close it up all the way, then I would just keep going until I had a bag that would completely close. Okay, so from here I'm going to do double crochet row, and before I start I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2, and I'm going to do a double crochet in every one of those stitches all the way around. So when you do a double crochet, you yarn over first before going into your stitch, then go into your stitch, pull the yarn through, then you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, then yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. And that's a double crochet. Now we're going to do that again. Yarn over, go into the next stitch over, pull the yarn through, you have 3 loops, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over and pull through those 2. And just keep repeating this in every stitch all the way around. I've made it all the way around, but I thought I'd stop and show you what it looks like because I didn't add a marker, and I didn't suggest that you add one either, just in case you don't know what you're looking at. These are double crochet posts. They're quite long. So there's the first one I did right there. And there's my chain 2. So I only have 2 stitches left that I have to work into. So I'm going to put my double crochet into that one, and then double crochet into the last stitch of the row. And now I'm going to slip stitch into the first double crochet that I made. So that's the top of this first post right here. So I'll just go through, grab the yarn, pull it through. Instead of yarning over, just pull the first loop through the second loop. And there we go, we've connected the first and last double crochet together. So now I can finish off. Pull the yarn tail through that loop and pull tight. And I'm just going to weave in the yarn tail. We don't need it for anything, so I'm going to weave it in. And I'll bring it down underneath the double crochets into a row of single crochets. I'll bring it down there. Actually, you know what? I'll just keep going. I'll bring it right down here to the corner. And then I can knot it off. So I'll knot it off right here. And then I'll carry it underneath in between the plastic and the yarn and just pull it through anywhere, and now I can cut free. So we don't have to worry about that yarn tail coming loose at any time. So now we need to make a chain, just like I did with this one here. And to tell you the truth, I have no idea how many chains I'm going to make. I'll let you know. If I can remember to keep track of these chains, I'll let you know when I'm finished chaining. So I'm going to start with a slip knot and start chaining. 1, 2, 3, 4, Alright, so I've chained 100, and I'm thinking that might be just enough. So I'm just going to straighten out this edge here. And because I'm going to be weaving in and out of those double crochet posts, I just need a chain that will fit all the way around here. I'll add 10 more chains. So in the end I'll have chained 110. Alright, I'm going to break free. I'm not going to cut that short just yet because I need it to use it to weave in and out of these posts. So I'm going to use this yarn tail to pull the chain through. So I'm going to start on the corner here. Just going to go through one of those posts and in and out all the way around. Okay, so now I'm going to take my yarn tail, I'm going to sew the ends of these chains together. Okay, so I just added a couple stitches on the end there. Now I'm just going to knot these two yarn tails together and pull tight. Okay, now I can cut free. I'll just leave a little bit of a length there. And that should hold. If you're worried about it letting go, you can always rub a little bit of tacky glue on the very end. But since I added a couple of stitches and then knotted it off, I don't think it'll let go. So I think what I'm going to do is, this is like a felt-like material. You can use any sort of material. You can sew it in. I'm going to actually use hot glue, and please, if you decide to do the same thing as me, be very careful because hot glue could go right through the holes in the yarn and burn you. So just please use at your own risk, but be very, very careful. So I think I'm going to put a back piece on first, and again, you can sew this in very easily. I'm just not going to bother going through that. So I've made a piece that will fit along the back and the bottom wall. Yeah, see, it come right through in the back there. So you want to be careful how much you put in there because once hot glue touches yarn, it's not going to come off either. So not the best option to use if you're not confident with using a hot glue gun. Might be even something to consider sewing in some material on top of your plastic before putting the plastic into place, but then you wouldn't be able to use your yarn needle. You'd have to use a small needle to sew everything else in. So I've cut a strip to fit in there. I put the one end in first, pushed it all into place, and then I trimmed up the other end. I managed to glue the whole thing in without burning myself, so that's a plus. But again, I wouldn't recommend that. You can easily sew these pieces in. Just takes a little bit of extra time. But anyway, I got it done, and now I'm going to think about adding some snow as well. But let's just close this up and see how it looks. Alright guys, I am popping in with an edit. In the next clip I'm going to show you how to make the extensions on the snow peak. And I ended up, before I finished writing the pattern, making a snow peak that had more coverage of snow. And again, you can play around with how that looks, and you don't even have to do exactly what I've done here. So in the next clip I'm going to be working on the smaller one here, and I'm going to be showing you how to do all of these extensions. So let's get started. Now we're going to make the snow peak, and don't worry, I do show you how to sew this in place, and that will be in the following clip. If you read the written pattern, this part here is the short one that I was talking about, and I made it short so I could sew it onto the front where it closes up here. So that was the only one I really thought through. The rest of them I didn't think too much about. Alright guys, let's start with a short one. We're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we're going to single crochet down the chain. And when you single crochet down a chain, you usually want to start in the second chain from the hook. So there's the first one, and there's the second one. And when you go through, I always like to make sure I have 2 loops of that chain on top of my hook, and the 1 loop on the bottom. This makes it easier for me to get through. And single crochet. And now we're going to go into the next chain over. And single crochet. And into the next chain. Single crochet. And now we're going to single crochet into the base. Now I'm going to turn, so the wrong side is facing me, and I'm going to single crochet up here. I'm not going to chain or anything, I'm just going to go ahead and single crochet into the first little stitch hole there. And then into the next stitch hole. And I'm going to slip stitch up here into that last one. Go through, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then pull it through. And turn it so the right side is facing me again. Okay, I'm going to single crochet into this space here, and then into this one. And I'm going to single crochet down into the base. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 1 single crochet, and then 1 single crochet. And now I'm going to chain again, and we can make a long one. Let's chain 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now single crochet down the chain. So there's the first one. I'm going to start in the second one. Single crochet. And into the next chain. And if you think you're skipping chains or working the same chain twice, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. You can see none of these are really even looking or even that straight. I just wanted to make little extensions, so don't worry about being so neat and tidy. It's going to work out. This is one of those patterns that you can modify to make it look a little bit different than mine. You don't have to worry about stitch counts. Okay, I'm at the bottom of the chain. So I'm at the bottom, so I'm going to single crochet into the base. And now I want to turn because I want to make this wider. So just like in that previous one there, I'm going to single crochet into those stitch holes all the way up, and then I'll slip stitch the last one. So I'm going to speed this part up, and I'll meet you here at the end. So just coming to the end of that extension, I'm going to slip stitch the very tip, and I'm going to turn. So now the right side is facing me. And the reason why I'm not chaining when I turn is because I want to keep this rounded. So now I'm going to go into this stitch here and single crochet down to the bottom. So I have the separation between this short one and this one by crocheting 2 stitches in between those two. And you can see if I sewed it back on like this, that would work out really nice that way, because I have the little bit of snow coming down the front, and then I'll have my 2 side pieces. But if I didn't want that much space in between this one and this one, then I wouldn't crochet 2 over. I would just do 1 over. So I've already gotten into the base there. So I'm going to single crochet 1 time over, and now I'm going to chain. And I'll do 7. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And again, you can make it longer if you want. And I'm going to single crochet down this chain. Alright, I just put in my last one, and you can see there's that little bit of space I have between the last one and that first one that I started off with, and I want that space. again so I can sew it in the front. You can do it differently if you want to. So now I'm just going to finish off here. So I'll just slip stitch the next one and finish off. Now you want to leave a tail for sewing. So I'm going to leave a long tail for sewing. Alright, so now we're going to sew the snow peak on. So let's get started doing that. I think what I'll do is I'll sew the shorter spike here into the front, but I want to make sure that I don't interfere with that chain in there at all. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I take the tip of this little snow bit and I'm going to go right through a double crochet post and make sure not to hit my chain, because if I do that then my chain won't suck it all in together again. Alright, so I got this one sewn down, these two sewn down, and then this one sewn down, and I've got this back left to do and the center. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stick some stuffing in the center part just to make it stand up a little bit. Alright guys, popping in with another edit. If you decided to make the larger snow peak, then of course you're going to want to sew in this one, these two side ones, and these two side ones before you stuff it. Otherwise it's going to be too difficult. And it's going to take a little bit of extra work just to try to keep everything down as you're sewing. So pins might be helpful. And yeah, just make sure you sew in these front ones first. And then you can go ahead and stuff it and it'll be a lot easier getting the rest down that way. And when you sew around the front, you can see you can see some of my stitches there. I didn't realize that. But if you keep the stitches very short, and you pull them fairly tight, then you shouldn't see them under here. I think I was working a little bit too fast there. Yeah, you can't see them under here. And again, you can sew right into this part of the pouch. The only part you want to be worried about is not sewing into that chain that closes anything up. You can sew into the double crochet post, but just make sure not to hit the chain inside there. So I'm going to sew it in a way where it kind of holds that peak up. So when my needle goes through, it's going between the gray and the plastic mesh sheet inside. So I'm just going to do a couple stitches back and forth here. And do one near the top. I'm just going to pinch this together a little bit, just to get a little bit of a peak when you're looking dead on. So I think I'll do the rest off camera, and then I'll come back and show you what I got. I noticed over here, I don't think I like this too much, so I'm going to close that up. Here, I'll do it for you on camera before I leave. So I can just bring my yarn tail over there, and then I could just wrap around and pull. Wrap through both edges, and then pull. And that will close up that gap a little bit. There we go. I like that already much better. So yeah, so there's no science to it. You're just going to do what looks good for you. So I'm all done sewing it in, and I actually really love it. I had my doubts there for a few seconds if it was going to turn out or not, but I think it looks really good. Looks like snow that's falling, has freshly fallen and is coming down the side of the mountain. I really like that. And then we can stick our little guys in here. And when we want to close them up, alright my friends, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did make yourself a little mountain, please post pictures on my Facebook page, Amigurumi Freely. I'd love to see them. And if you want to make this little monster that goes inside of the mountain, now you can click that video that's popping up on your screen, and it's going to show you some of the parts, some of the harder parts of making this little guy here. I'll walk you through those, and I'll see you over in the next video. Click that little box, and I'll see you over there.